The Douglas Coleman Show is made possible with support from Seth David Radwell, a recent guest on the program and author of American Schism, How the Two Enlightenments Hold the Secret to Healing Our Nation, released this past July. As Publishers Weekly writes in its recent glowing book life review of American Schism, business executive Radwell's epic debut examines the historical influences that have led to what he sees as the collapse of politics in the United States. Seth Radwell makes the case that the current chasm between the American right and left can be traced back to the 18th century's Age of Enlightenment and the basic tenets of liberty, equality, and reason. American Schism provides a historical perspective that can help us fight today's unreason with reason and bridge current-day divides. American Schism by Seth David Radwell is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold. For more information, go to americanschismbook.com.
It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life. From the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
You are now on the line with Douglas Coleman.
Hello.
Hello, David Baldacci. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Oh, good. Welcome back to the show. This is your
Thank you. It's great to be back.
third time on this show. I'm absolutely thrilled. That's great.
Same here. Thank you.
So I got your information from your publicist, and we're going to be talking about misery, and it says, as you say goodbye to Atlee for now. So is this is the end of the series?
No, I think, this is the end of the Mercy story with Atlee Pine. She finds, what happened to her sister and her family in this novel. But Atlee Pine and Carol Blum, they have more road to run, I think. I'd finished this novel thinking, okay, do I want to bring her back? Is there more for her character to grow? Is there more I want to write about her? And the answers were all yes to those. So even though this is the end of the Mercy story, it's still very much the beginning of the Atlee Pine story. I really invested a lot in creating her character, and I've got more I want to do with her.
Okay, so without giving too much away, can you give us a little bit of an overview of Mercy?
Yeah, so this is the fourth book. In the first novel, On a Long Road to Mercy, we learned that Pine was one of twins. Her sister Mercy was kidnapped from their home in Georgia when they were only 6 years old, and Atlee was almost killed by the abductor. And it destroyed Pine's family. Their parents divorced, her father disappeared, their mother followed, and Pine was left all alone as an adult. She joined the FBI, probably because of what happened to her sister. And then after the Long Road to Mercy, she solved a mystery in that case. She decided, look, I'm screwed up, and I've got to find out what happened to my sister. If I don't have resolution there, I can't move forward with my own life. So the next two books, A Minute to Midnight and Daylight, she worked on, finding out what happened to her sister crossing the country, picking up clues, going back to the scene of the crime, talking to people, unearthing old details. And she and Carol worked their way steadily through until they find out who had kidnapped Mercy, why he had done it, and what had happened to her after that. And then now they're seeking, where is she now? And they know from what they found out before in the previous book, she's had a terrible, traumatic experience. The people that took her in were horrible, terrible people. And she's out there somewhere. She may be alive, she may be dead. Pine doesn't know at this point, but she knows that she's not the 6-year-old little girl with the big smile and the pigtails anymore. 30 years have passed, and they haven't been good ones for Mercy.
Are any of your stories that you've written, aside from this one, I mean, I know you've done a lot, does anything come from your real-life experiences or things or people that you've known, or are they purely fictitious imagination?
It's a mix of different things. It sometimes could be, something I read about. Years ago I wrote a book called The Simple Truth because I had read a law case where the CIA and the Army had tested PCP on a bunch of soldiers unknowingly. And then years later, the Army had sent out an apology letter without ever telling them that they'd actually done this to them. And I had an idea for a novel called The Simple Truth about a guy whose life had been ruined. He was in prison because of being given PCP unwittingly. So oftentimes you could be, like the Pine family, I've never had one of my siblings abducted, thank God, but we all suffered loss and grief in our lives. Anybody who's been alive has suffered that. And you sort of try to channel that emotion into different directions. What would Atlee Pine feel like? What would Mercy Pine feel like? Family dynamics are really complicated, but everybody has a family. And if you tend to sort of sit down and observe and look back what's happened to you and your family over the years and extrapolate that out on different levels, you can arrive at, a pretty authentic version of what you need to discuss something like a Mercy Pine, the kidnapping and what happened to her afterwards. So it's kind of a mix, personal experience, totally imagination, some things that I read and other things that I learn about from other people.
So it's kind of a composite.
It is kind of a composite, yeah. I think that, I observe a lot in my life. I go out, I love watching people, I love listening to them, I seeing what makes the world and people tick in general. And, I've taken little pieces of people that I've met in my lives, personalities, physical tics, the way somebody talks or swaggers or works a room, and grafted it onto characters because I find it interesting. Even though I write fiction, I write a fictionalized version of real life, so I have to bring authenticity to it. And the way I do that is by taking observations I made in real life and, including them in my stories.
Well, with all the craziness of COVID over the last 18 months, has any of that seeped into your writing? You're going to write a pandemic series?
God, no.
Thank you.
Decision not to do that. We've had to live it, and I think people want to open a book and so maybe escape from real life for a little bit. So the only thing I that is fair game, certainly the pandemic has exposed a lot of things in people and how they address things, how they work through things, how they perceive things, how they misperceive things. And that human psychology component of what's been revealed to me during this pandemic over the last 2 years, definitely something I've already used in books that I'm working on now. I just find it sort of fascinating. And we live in a very precarious time right now. And it's interesting how things can be weaponized and politicized that, even 30 years ago, nobody would have thought of doing it. It's just, it's interesting. It seems like the more people evolve and as time goes by, people, do evolve and, reach higher planes, but sometimes people go the other way and reach lower planes and things go back to the basics and you wonder, how that got turned around.
Well, without getting real political, I think that this is probably the most divided I've ever seen the country, certainly in my lifetime, and I'm going to be 60 years old next year. And then, the whole...
Like I'm 1859. I feel like I'm in 1859.
God, I hope we don't have civil war. But if we did, here's a hypothesis for you. If we had a civil war in this country, what do you suppose it would look like?
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Douglas Coleman's Don't Do a Podcast is a dryly humorous rant about Douglas's pet peeve, the unrelenting torrent of podcasts hitting the web on a constant basis. As technology has put podcasting within the reach of anyone, many wholly unqualified people have taken the plunge. This witty polemic tries to persuade them from broadcasting their drivel using Douglas's brand of sarcastic humor. Now on Amazon, only 99 cents.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Are you an independent musician? How would you like to have your songs played on hundreds of radio stations just like the one you're listening to right now? Join MusicSubmit.com and we'll promote your music to radio stations and blogs in your genre. It's free to set up your account, and we guarantee your music will be considered for airplay by radio stations worldwide. Why not sign up today? It's free. MusicSubmit.com. Radio promotion for indie musicians.
Hey, this is Ray Powers. Don't touch anything. You've got it right where you need it. Tuned in to the Douglas Coleman Show. You heard me.
I think it would be, I don't think you'd have two large competing armies. It's not the way this thing is going to play out. I think you'll have small and large pockets of violence and civil unrest and uprisings strewn throughout. Not soldier against soldier, but maybe citizen against citizen, civilian against civilian. Again, I pray to God none of this comes true. But I think it would be a lot more actually disruptive than if you had two disciplined, trained armies going at one another. This is going to be a much more helter-skelter, ragtag sort of thing, and incredibly disruptive to everybody. And nobody wants a battlefield, in the middle of their neighborhood. So I don't know. I never thought I would have to be thinking about this, quite frankly. I never thought I'd live to see the Capitol being attacked either by people, citizens either. It's just, I don't know. It was even beyond my imagination.
Yeah, it's a strange time we're living in. Let me ask you a little bit about your Wish You Well Foundation. Why don't you just tell us a little about it?
Yeah, I think this is our 20th year. My wife and I founded it to support and fund literacy organizations and programs and initiatives across the country. We feel it's very important for people to read at the highest level possible for lots of different reasons. And the last 2 years, we've given out more money than we've ever given out before because of the pandemic. The need is terrific. A lot of people we see have been exposed as having fallen through the cracks, and they just need this extra support. And a lot of businesses that supported those initiatives fell on hard times because of the economy. Just, the floor fell out and stopped funding, and a lot of these places went out of business. And we tried to step into the breach and work with as many as we possibly could. So it's actually been a silver lining that we've been able to fund so many different programs to a greater extent than before. So we want to keep continuing to do that, and we think that good things will come from that. The more people can read and think at a higher level, the better for all of us.
Do you think technology has stifled people's desire to sit down and read a whole book?
I think it's certainly made the field a lot more competitive. Abraham Lincoln, he was a self-educated man who would read by candlelight with a few books that he got from different places. Today, he could have his VR that he could put on and do a virtual reality, jog through the Alps. He could listen to, an iPod. He could watch a movie, stream a platform if he wanted all day. So there's lots of other diversions. And I do think, that the numbers I've seen, actually, the last 2 years have been probably the two best years for publishing in a long time because people sort of got back to the basics. They weren't going to the office. They needed diversions. And, there are only so many shows that you can binge without your eyeballs falling out. And I think that sometimes people just want to sit back with a book, however they listen to it, read it on an ebook reader or have a hard copy in their hands and read it. And because, when you watch something on television, there's not a whole lot of room for your imagination to add to it. It is what it is. You're looking at it. You're hearing it. Everything is there. You're seeing a director's version of what a story is. But with a book, it's different. You can add little bits and pieces of your own imagination. I always tell people I write a book and it's never finished until the reader reads it and closes it. Then it's done for that particular reader because you've added your own template onto what I've written.
Well, it's true. And if you give a book to 10 people and they read it and then you ask them to describe the room or the scene that maybe one of the chapters took place in, you'll get different responses. Where you can't get that with a movie or TV,
That's right. It's absolutely right, and I've seen that happen in real time with me. I've discussed with readers, and they say, "No, this is what that meant. No, this is what that meant." Well, what did it mean, David? And I said exactly what you said. Both of you are right, because it's your experience that relates to the book, and I want that you to have that freedom to expound upon that. I've been listening to people say they don't want kids to read any book in school that makes them uncomfortable, and as a writer and as a kid who read everything growing up, I thought that was the point of books, to take you out of your comfort zone and expose you to things you didn't know about or ever think about. but that might be important. So for me, I think readers coming to different conclusions based on the same book is a wonderful thing, because everybody's bringing their own unique experiences and perspectives to something that I've written. And if it makes them think about things a little bit more, then I think I've done my job.
Well, speaking of TV and TV projects, I see on your bio here that you've had a couple of books adopted by Hallmark.
Yeah, The Christmas Train, a book I wrote years ago, is the highest-rated Hallmark movie of all time. They run it every Christmas. And then one summer, a book I wrote about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe longer, I found out they were filming that this summer. I didn't know until my film agent called. And then it came out in October and did incredibly well, so much so that Hallmark called up and asked my agent if I had anything else like that for them in my back pocket. It's just different books. I write a lot of different things, and those were two that were very well suited for Hallmark. And I sold the John Puller series. He's my military investigator at the Fox Primetime, so they're working on a primetime series for that. And then years ago, I'd written not a book, but just an idea. I wrote a pilot for a spy thriller, for a female spy thriller that I thought was sort of dead in the water. I thought everybody had passed on it, but then I learned recently that Patricia Clarkson signed on to star in it, and then Natalie Emmanuel, who starred in Game of Thrones and Fast and the Furious, has signed on to be the daughter. They're going to start filming that in Canada next year, and it's going to be on one of the platforms, sometime after that. So it's interesting. I just thought that project was dead, but somebody picked it up, really loved it, and they got two actresses who really loved it, and off we go. You just never know how it works sometimes.
Have you written any proper screenplays? Have you delved into that?
I have, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I've had several screenplays, original screenplays optioned. I've adapted one of my own books for feature film, Wish You Well, that still starred Ellen Burstyn and Josh Lucas. And that was quite an experience. I was on the set every day. I was rewriting things every day. I'm in the middle of a farm yard on a plank table on my laptop. Ellen Burstyn's in full wardrobe in front of a camera, and I'm rewriting a page of dialogue while, chickens and roosters are all over my butt. So talk about a little bit of pressure. But it was a great experience, and I think screenplay writing has made my novels better. I'm more succinct and concise. I'm not as verbose. My plots are more streamlined. I hit my marks and get out of a scene, really effectively and efficiently. And there's very little fat in my books.
Well, I think that's the trick with screenplay writing, is sort of the economy of words, right? It's totally the opposite of writing a novel.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And, one can learn from the other. And I've certainly learned that if I can say something in 10 words rather than 100, I can say it far more powerfully. If you think about the greatest political speech in American history, it's the Gettysburg Address, which is only 360 words long. It took Lincoln like 2.5 minutes to say it. The congressman who spoke before him at Gettysburg spoke for 2.5 hours. And Lincoln got up and spoke so fast, a lot of people didn't realize he had spoken. So when the speech was published in the newspapers all over the country, everybody forgot about the congressman's speech and focused on that. And that shows you the power of really thinking out and choosing the exact right word in every instance. And so those 365 words ring in people's lives to this day, whereas, the 2.5 hour speech nobody remembers.
Yeah, that's true. Is poetry writing similar in that mindset about just picking the exact words to make the most powerful impression?
Even on steroids, yes, it is. It takes it to another level, because it's not like you have 10,000 words to be able to do something. You may only have a few dozen. And so I've always tipped my hat to poets. I don't have the ability, the creativity, or the power to do that. And those that do, it's a phenomenal skill and a unique one. So I think they take that just the covetousness of, the exact right word. Like Mark Twain used to famously say, he said that the difference between the right word and almost the right word is a large thing. It's the difference between the lightning bug and the lightning. And I couldn't have said it better myself.
Last question, and then I'll let you go. It says, do you ever foresee a time when you might sit back and put your feet up and stop writing?
No. I mean, that happens, I'm no longer breathing. So wouldn't be a good thing for me. I hope that's a way off in the distance. Writing is it's who I identify now. When I wake up in the day, and this is what I focus on, and when I go to bed at night, I'm still thinking about it. And I think that's why I've been as prolific as I have been, because I've never treated this as a job, a hobby, occupation, even a passion. I treat it as a part of who I am, a significant part of who I am. So when I finish a book, I don't say, thank God that's over, I'm going to take a vacation. I'm like, what do I do next? It's kind of like an addiction for me. But that's how I've always approached my career. I just love what I do. And other people say that, they don't really mean it. They love, the money that comes from it, and that's fine too. But literally, I wrote for like 15 years and didn't make a dime because nobody was buying anything I was writing. But I was learning a craft. I was having a lot of fun, and I was creating a lot of interesting characters that are, friends to this day.
Can you shut it off, though? Or is it just constant?
Yeah, it's really hard to shut off. I'll be at a party, and this has happened many times, and I'll be off in the party sitting in the corner with a drink in my hand, staring at a corner of the ceiling, and somebody will go to my wife and say, "Is David okay? It looks like he's had a stroke." And my wife will look over, and she goes, "No, he's just finishing up a chapter. Give him 10 minutes. He'll be back." And then she goes back to her drink. So that's how it works in our house.
Well, I'm glad that she can recognize that and doesn't call 911 every time you go off into the ozone, right?
That's right. She's got the expert high now.
Well, David, thank you so much for coming on again. We got to wrap this up. Best of luck with Mercy. Is Mercy out?
Yeah, it came out this Tuesday, in fact, so it's everywhere that you normally buy your books, and I'm glad it's finally out. It's been a long time coming, and I'm glad people finally get to see what happened to Mercy.
All right, well, great. And have a great Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays, and maybe we'll talk to you in the new year.
Okay, that sounds great. I appreciate it. Enjoy it as always.
Okay, thanks, David. Take care.
Okay.